and then we're going to get started at 6:05. All right. All right, we're going to get started. I believe Miss Carey should be coming in a few minutes. Again, we have Ray and Associates here. They're going to share some information with us. The board will ask some questions. Again, at the end of the meeting, we're going to allow for 30 minutes worth of questions. Tracy is going to take a look when they come into the chat, and Tracy, it's supposed to be one per person for 30 minutes. Just when we point, we're monitoring, and then we are going to sign off and go home. Well, most of us are already home, but you know what I mean. All right, so Ms. Carey should be calling in a few minutes, everybody. Then we have Dale Caldwell, we have Kathy. I can't pronounce that all the way.
It's okay.
All right, and then we have Mike Collins. They're all with us today. They're going to share some information about the process, and that's it. So thank you. You guys have it.
I just want to interrupt for a second, Antoinette. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I don't know if it's the same for everyone else. You are kind of like, you sound like one of those Charlie Brown characters a little bit.
You know, I'm not really sure. I will say this, something must be changing in my house, because the last couple of classes that I was on for Saturday, people were saying that they could not hear me. And I'm literally on my laptop, like my laptop is right in front of me. So I found that I guess when I lean in a little bit closer, you can hear better. So I'll try to keep mind of that.
Okay.
Well, we lost you at the end there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, jumping the signal isn't strong.
I don't know what it is, but we'll make it work. You guys, right now, Ray and Associates, they have it at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you, Antoinette. Mike and Kathy, I'll kick it off. And so I think you all have our topics for discussion, and we're just going to go through those six items. The first one is the timeline for the superintendent search. And we do our searches in 5 stages. And so stage 1 is board input and preparation. Stage 2 is profile development and process. Stage 3 is recruiting and screening. Stage 4 is candidate presentation. And stage 5 is the selection of the finalists and future planning. So we're starting tonight. We are hitting the ground running, and with the idea that our plan is to finish the final meeting with consultant following the last interview will be February 1st. So we know you're in a very, very tight time frame, but we wanted to start this early so that we can get through that process. So within stage 1, that board input and preparation, one of the key things that we do in addition to this presentation is meeting with each of the individual board members. We think it's important to really get your individual sense of the process, of what you're looking for, and answer any private questions that you have about the search. In the meantime, Kathy and team are preparing information for our promotional flyer and job description. We're notifying our associates about this search, and our hope is that the board will begin the process of contacting constituents and stakeholders for their input for the meetings. Stage 2 is the profile development and process. So we have an online survey link for people developing the process. One of the key components of this and what separates us is really connecting with the constituents and stakeholder groups so that they have input into the process. We'll talk in a second about the 33 qualities, that they pick 10 of those 33 qualities. But the whole point is so that they have real input on what are we looking for the district? What is critical? What are some of the critical areas that the next superintendent needs to have? We will have a promotional flyer draft in stage 2, and we will finalize, and we're hoping by November 24th, finalize a superintendent profile for the promotional flyer and job description for the online application form. So stage 3 is really the process of recruiting. Once we have that we've gotten input from the board, we've gotten input from the stakeholders, the constituents, we are actively looking with our associates around the country, looking at identifying all sorts of associations and others to identify the best candidates. As we're doing that, stage 4, we develop and finalize interview questions and procedures for the board. We will, in January, mid-January, we're looking to present to the board top candidates after selecting the resumes and reviewing them. And the week of January 25th, we're talking about interviewing the top candidates for the first round. After that, we are going to meet with the board to talk about those interviews. In February, we're the interview finalist candidates, the final meeting with the consultant following the last interview. Stage 5 is to be determined, discussing the contract terms of the finalist and the contract, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a pretty tight process we've been doing for decades that works really, really well. And the fact that we're able to start now really enables us to meet your deadlines. So that's step 1. Step 2 is discussing these qualities. One of the things that's really critical in finding the right superintendent is identifying what are the characteristics that you are looking for as a board, as constituents, as stakeholders. And so we have a proven list of 33 qualities that we, through online and paper evaluations, surveys, we really will collect those qualities. This is a really important part of the process because this will help us as we develop the job description, as we really look for the perfect person for the district. The constituent groups are really important, and you as the board really help us identify what groups do you think are important. How often do we have should we have meetings? When and where should the meetings be? So that we make sure that the voices are heard throughout the community. We want to make sure that that the profile is developed, as in a very, very quality and detailed way. We're going to develop a promotional flyer with your approval. We've done this in districts around the country. The online application process is pretty standard. We have a number of job searches throughout the year. Some of the best candidates and best superintendents in the country are always looking at our website. And so that process works very, very well. One of the things, and then, I want to go through all of this quickly and then answer questions, is that, well, what about salary? How do you determine salary? Well, we really look at districts around the country with similar profiles, similar numbers of students. And we're looking at about 7 to 10 comparable districts. And based on that, we develop a recommended salary for the superintendent with the board's input. So it's a very, very tight process. We've done it in a wide range of districts of every size. So that's a quick overview. Mike, Kathy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Just a couple things, if I may, Dale. Number one, can somebody tell me, because I'm sorry I didn't hear Antoinette, what's the name of the person on the phone? Because there's a phone number and no name. So
Yes, that's Miss Cora Karen. Miss Cora Carey.
I still didn't quite hear.
Miss Cora Carey.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Number one, what I'd like to say first and foremost, and Dale, thanks for that really good, run through of a time frame. First of all, thanks for selecting us. We're delighted to be at the first time when we really get a chance to be together. This isn't going to be our last time, as they say. We're going to spend some time together. We're going to get to know each other well. We really encourage you to be as open and candid with us as possible, because as you know, and I spent 16 years in your seat. So I spent 2 terms as an elected member of the city school board, and I spent 2 terms as an elected member of the State Board of Education in the state of Ohio. So I come to you as one of you. And I just want to share with you that as we walk into this and walk through this, all the questions about the process are really important, some of which, and Cora, thanks for putting up your name now that I can see it. One of the things that would be very helpful is that we make sure that we're as clear as possible with you. Dale is right on target to the step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, et cetera. And we'll review these every time we're together. So it's not like you got to memorize them at the moment. Terry, I do want to make one shout out. I love your bow tie in the picture, but I actually like your John Lewis t-shirt a lot. That's what you had on tonight. So I just want to share that. But as we go forward, the other thing I want to say is that our primary communication typically, so you know, can be with any of you, and you're all welcome to speak to us. Dale is the leader of this search. He's one of our few senior national associates who does searches not only in the Northeast area, but he also works with us around the country. But on behalf of Dale and behalf of Kathy, and I don't usually attempt to speak for either one of them very often, but I'm going to try this time, and that is that I want to tell you that Ivy is an absolute joy and understands your operations extremely well, and to have somebody like that in the district internally is extremely helpful for our work. So we're thrilled to have this opportunity to interface. She may feel differently before we're done, but right now we want you to know how happy we are starting with her. Aside from that, I think the biggest thing right now, and there's already 2 questions in the chat. I just want to reassure everybody we're going to get there. So give us just a little bit of time and then we'll come back to those, because I think the most important thing of all is in this get to know each other. Here's where we are. The process has got steps. It's got a time frame. The most important thing of all is that time frame allows for us to open the floodgates. When Dale spoke about when we put this word out, once we have your profile and your description, the largest search elements that we offer you are the connections of our associates, and in particular, our website. We get over 3,400 individual visits to our website every single month. We've been at it a long time. We are national. And at the same time, we will ask all of you and even people in the community, please let us know if you've got somebody you want us to contact to make sure they at least think about the job. But let me be clear. When we contact them, we're not telling them they were recommended. All we're telling them is that in the course of conversation, their name has come up. If they're interested in looking at the application and checking out the process, we'll be happy to explain the process. But on our website is the application. Nobody gets this kind of treatment here and then not this kind of treatment here. Everybody's treated equal. But the amount of traffic that we just generate on a continuous basis is the greatest source. Our advertising, but everybody would offer you, it'll be the solid national advertising that everybody will know about Greenburgh's opening. But the fact of the matter is it's the connection in the environment that allows us to bring you the pool of candidates that we will bring you. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And then lastly, at the moment, is that this constituent groups that we will have, in this case, most likely Zoom meetings, because unfortunately numbers aren't getting better anywhere, is that we will sit down with you. You will go through a series of questions that'll help. You will tell us what kind of person you're looking for based on the strengths of the district, the strengths of the community, the challenges of the district. You know, what are the characteristics and qualities you would like to see, et cetera. So we will do that individually with board members. We will do it with individual groups in the constituent meetings. And then we will do it on this online survey that anybody can take, which is a research-based 33 high qualities of successful superintendents. Every one of you will be asked to go on there and pick the 10 that mean the most to you. We will pull all that tally together. We will share it with the board. The board then will say, okay, and then we will offer these characteristics on a profile, which becomes an application. And it's that application that goes out that tells your story, that tells what you're looking for. From there on out, everything's presented to the board. You'll decide who you're going to interview. You'll do your interviews. You'll decide who your finalists are. We'll bring the finalists back to also, if you choose, to have conversation with members of your community where they would at least have a chance to hear these finalists' story. That those were air. Sorry about my friend. Sorry, that's our four-legged child that I can't do anything about. He's a great little guy, but he thinks he owns the street. So then when you come back, when we bring these to you, you all in the community will be able to share with us the impressions you have of candidate A and candidate B. That's how we will take those impressions. It'll be an online survey, and those will go to the board as they make their decision. They'll know what you as a community also thought of the finalist candidates. So don't let the structure get in your way, but the structure is necessary for everybody to have a voice. And Dale, I'm sorry I took so long in terms of the time frame.
No, that's great. That's great, setting the stage. Questions about the process. It's your process. It's really guided. You know, it's guided. You know, it's important that the district is really making sure that the right qualifications are set up front. I guess, David.
Okay, so in terms of public input, I understand how the public will have input in terms of what the profile is of the candidate we're looking for. In terms of finalists, did you just tell us that there's going to be a certain level of openness in terms of the public interacting with the finalists or not?
Yes, yes.
And how much knowledge will the public have of those finalists?
Well, the finalists, one will show up in these online, they will probably use Zoom. I mean, the last set of community meetings I did in Pennsylvania had 127 people on it. So, you know, and we did it in smaller groups too. But during the course of a day, they'll interact internally with, you know, your staff, and they'll act externally with groups that you have put together that want to hear. They will tell their story. They will introduce themselves. They will tell who they are. They will respond to questions. They're structured. They all have the same amount of time. The next day or whatever, the other finalist gets their time to do exactly the same thing. Keep in mind, we're also very ethically HR conscious. So whatever we do for candidate A, we're going to do for candidate B. But they are, each of these groups, including the larger community group, will have questions, and they have to submit questions in advance they want to ask the candidates, but they will also have this impression sheet, which is kind of like a Survey Monkey form, where they will actually respond. The reason we don't ask you to pick candidate A or candidate B public, because honestly, you don't have a vote. The law in New York says you do not vote. The only people that vote are the school board. So we don't want to create a false expectation. You have a document that will be able to tell your board members what your impressions were of each candidate, and even you'll get a chance to indicate your preference. But the fact of the matter is there's only one body that votes, and none of us out there or on this Zoom right now made those laws. They exist in your statutes. Is that helpful, David?
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, Dale, go ahead.
No, that's good. Good. I mean, the thing I'll say, I remember doing this in Patterson, that, many of the questions of the community are very insightful and very helpful to the board and uncovering some valuable information. So that's really an important step. Other questions?
I have a question. I'm sorry, I can also show myself even though I'm not in my usual element. Hi. So I was just wondering, so this is not akin to the process that we had for hiring an assistant superintendent of curriculum, in the sense that there is no there is no hiring committee that consists of community members and teachers and union. This is just basically the board sort of getting community input, but fundamentally the board being the major decision body. Am I getting that difference correct?
As Mike said, by the statutes, the board makes this decision. So, it's by the law. And so, but the board, allows as much input as possible. So, so it is a process. And I'm on the, I've been on my school board for 23 years. I was the state school board member of the year. So I sit where you sit. This is the most important thing that school board members do, is hiring a superintendent. And so, so this process that we treat with reverence is so very important for the success of the district, and more importantly, the success of your students.
So I'm sorry, I had one more question, and then I'll let others ask the questions. You said that you would interview individual board members, and Ivy requested the best contact number. When is that going to be, and what number will you be calling from so that we know to pick up?
Well, my number, are you telling me that you get spam? Are you telling me that spam? I may get a call, as we sit here. So my number is 732-208.
Yeah, I wouldn't put your, excuse me, I don't think you should say your whole number, but 732 area code, right?
732 area code, yeah, that's fine, just so that we, yeah.
Yes, 732-208.
Okay,
so
got it.
You'll get spam.
We'll send it out to you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get mine also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ashley?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, guys, I was late. I was dealing with the emergency at work. Thankfully, that's resolved now. In any event, I do have one question. So you're noticing a common theme here, right? We all tend to be sensitive to community input and trying to ensure as much of it as possible. You've laid out more or less a plan for how to do that. I guess my question is not necessarily directly towards Ray and Associates. It could be maybe internally for our board as well. Maybe it's a mix. How do we ensure maximum participation, not only from a constituent group's perspective, but try to even get those folks in our community that don't come to the board meetings, that aren't really fully, in attendance and know what's going on with the school district, get some of their input as well. Because I think the biggest thing we've heard in the past has always been, essentially, if you're not following the board meetings, you don't know what's going on. And we do have a percentage of our population in the town that doesn't follow the board meetings. So if there's a way possible, and obviously looking for best practices here, to kind of fold that input somehow, I think that would be a great idea.
And that's a great point. So our online survey is really important. There are people, there are people who aren't comfortable coming to board meetings, who aren't comfortable, and we have it in multiple languages, certainly English, Spanish, any other languages that you would like it in. So even if you're someone who's not comfortable, especially in this COVID world, that online survey allows input from everybody. And so we think that's critically important. But now the board knows, we don't know all of the constituent groups. The board has the great sense of who should this go out to? What's the best way to get it out to the community? And so we will defer to you. And then when I have my individual conversations with the board members, we'll kind of talk about some of that. What constituent groups are important to you? How do you think we can best get this information out to them? That's a good question.
I have a follow-up question there. Have you ever seen, maybe one way to do it, to your point, is if we're using the online survey, have you ever seen an instance where maybe the town's distribution list or something along those lines was leveraged for that, with their permission to send it out to them to kind of get a bigger group?
Oh, yeah.
Chips?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Ashley, you'll tell us how you normally do these things. We may make some suggestions of what we've seen elsewhere to see if you have some similar networks that could be used. Okay. We need some guidance. We don't live there, but we certainly have a great deal of experience in history and some very unique ways in terms of making contact and reaching typically unconnected populations, because that's what you're talking about.
Perfect. That was a perfect way to put it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Other questions?
Antoinette?
Antoinette, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you at all.
We still can't hear you. Do you want to call in?
No, I really don't want to call in.
Wait.
Can you hear me a little bit better?
A little bit.
I have two questions. One, so that community input does include like staff members, of our school, from principals all the way through, custodians as well. I'm just trying to how when we say community, are we including also a lot of the people who work out the district?
Now, did I hear that? Does this include principals and staff? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's all. I read lips sometimes, so it's all included. Yes, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. This is the superintendent is the superintendent of the community, of the parents, of the constituents, and so that's really, really important. And we again, we're going to defer to you as to the best way to get that out. I know a number of the searches I've done, I've been actually somewhat disappointed that the board hasn't been able to get out as many of the staff as we would like. But absolutely.
We would advise you to work with each of your respective association leaderships, so that your classified staff and those association or union leaderships, they're also help you get the word out. Then we move into the teachers, then we move into the principals, and then your administrators. And in New York, they are all bargaining units. In other parts of the country, some of them are lumped together. I grew up in upstate New York. My 4-year district experience of many moons ago was in New York. I am well aware of each one of the associations.
We still can't hear. Oh, okay. Actually, maybe on the phone.
No, I'm not on the phone. I'm not on the phone. My other question is, I feel like I'm shouting. My other question is, when you say that the community will meet with the finalists, how do you protect the confidentiality of the finalists? I assume some of them may be interviewing, maybe they didn't tell their respective districts that they are. So how do you ensure confidentiality of anyone applying and interviewing?
Mike, why don't you take that?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that I've had the experience, and I'm sure Dale has as well, where we go to all extremes. Okay, in the state of Michigan, we had to call them candidate A, candidate B, and candidate C, because even when you even discuss who you're going to interview, it's in public. So that's how challenging it was on that side, Antoinette. We actually tell everybody that if you get to be a finalist, your name's going to be prepared that your name's going to be released. Because if you're down to the final two, I don't know about you, Dale, but I haven't seen an experience where that caused somebody to drop out. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be known before then, Antoinette. But if they're a finalist, it's somewhat a feather in their cap, number one. And number two is that we're very upfront. And I haven't seen that, and Dale, maybe you have, affecting the pool. When you start with the 10 or 12, we bring you from the very beginning, and you had to release those names, that would affect the pool.
Right. Right.
Even when you talk about the 4 to 6 you're going to interview and their names get out, that has some effect on the pool. But once you get down to the finalists, that, you know, in the public sector, in the public world, that's what happens. And I haven't seen it get in the way very much. Dale, please add to that. But
No, Mike, you're absolutely right. There's a big difference between the finalist and a candidate for it. And so that has to be kept confidential. But the finalist, if you're the 1, 2, or even 3, that's not you're not gonna lose good people. Other questions, good questions. These are great questions. Other comments, questions? Yeah, David.
When you talk to the individual board members, are you using the same 33 characteristic tool to try and determine which direction, what subset of candidates out there that you look for, or is there another methodology?
Well, it's you know, the board. This is the board's process. You are in charge, and so I'm you know, I'll have some standard basic questions, but I really want to get to more. See, when you have a big group, you need a structured process. Those 33 questions that go online, but I want to really get a sense of what the board is looking for, and we'll have a more open-ended conversation with each of you, so that we can really get your perspective on this, and then we come back and we put that in the mix and really come up with some ideas. And so I actually have, that's one of my favorite parts of this process, is really talking to the board members.
Okay.
yeah, David, we show up with basically a dozen questions for the board members. They're all the same questions for each of you. They all get handled a little bit differently, depend on your interest and your personality, obviously.
And then we go freeform.
Yeah, when we do the constituent meetings, those 12 are condensed. They're somewhat similar, but they're a little different for each constituent group. In each case, Dale and myself or whoever, we're really the scribes. We ask you a question, you all talk, we take notes. And then we'll deliver you a summary to the board itself. And this is on personnel, so it can be done in executive session. Here are the common themes and tenets that you all have said as a group. But every single interview is each your own individual interview, and we protect that. That's not what we talk about. We talk about, what did you say? What are those common threads? What are those themes that come out of you as a board seem to want, seem to care about, seem to want to make sure are considered, et cetera. Okay, so yeah, each one has its own play. The 33, you know, the 33 characteristics that we ask you to pick 10, like Dale was right on target. That's a more structured environment. And you're also actually asked to identify yourself. So whether you're a parent, we ask students, by the way, we hope one of your constituent groups are students.
Okay.
So you'll identify yourself in the survey as a parent, a community member, business leader, you know, teacher, custodian, bus driver, administrator, et cetera. We will actually give you the results of that survey, and you're welcome to make it public, because it is what it is, by constituent, by group. So you'll actually can see them, who said. Obviously, board has priority, but you'll get to look at all of them.
Good.
I have a 16-year-old who's in 11th grade, and she would be angry if she didn't have a chance to the superintendent process. So I know firsthand this is important. Other questions?
One last question. Can you hear that?
We can hear you. One last question. Yep.
As far as, what is the next step in regards to getting community?
So I heard next step. So I heard the next. What is the next step in
getting the community feedback and participation?
Okay, so again, so in stage one, you know, we're interviewing the board, right? And so I'll go through that again. So we are, you know, we're going to contact the constituents, you know, and stakeholders for input meetings. And right now we're talking about 18th and 19th of November. to do that. So we want to begin, and that'll come out of some of our conversations, begin the process of identifying who to contact and contacting constituents and giving them a date when they can get their input. So that's going to start quickly.
Okay. Thank you.
I just need to understand a little bit more about how that will actually happen. I'm sorry to sort of jump in, but are you actually going to ask us, I mean, specifically, like, will you ask us to send you email lists, or, I mean, how precisely will that work?
Yeah.
You actually, go ahead, Dale.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
You actually can do the invites. We'll do a schedule together. So those things that can be done during the day for people that don't get excluded, a la students, or right after school, we could do certain members of staff, et cetera. You know, business leaders a lot of times are able to do something at lunchtime. So we'll build this schedule of when, and then you'll invite those groups to come to those meetings. And then in the evening, there's a large community meeting. So if you can't make it in those times during the day, you can always make the community meeting. But we'll work with you. We'll ask you questions like, do you have a group like this? Because, you know, in some places, this is a pretty important body and it doesn't seem to be on your list. So we'll at least share what we're very familiar with and who might appear on this list. Does that help you, Tanya?
Not really, because what I'm trying to understand is it fundamentally then up to the board members to send out those invitations.
I typically, we would work with somebody inside the district that would do the scheduling with us, okay? And I know who's going to frown at me, and her name's Ivy, but typically we work with somebody inside the district.
Okay, got it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So if we wanted a neighborhood association or a list of neighborhood associations to go out and publish from their lists to individual people, right? So then we would send something out to the neighborhood association that correspond to our district. That's a subset of the town of Greenburgh. And then they, we hope, would broadcast that to their membership and bring people in that way, in addition to the normal, you know, posting things on our website and leveraging our lists and the PTAs and all that stuff.
Yeah, David, this is very intentional. We're going to ask you to be real intentional in your invites. You know what I mean? I mean, like, who needs, you know, intentional in terms of the groups you identify, and then intentional asking them to tell their members or tell their executive committee, however they each operate.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Any other comments, questions? No.
All right. Are we ready for community questions, or do you have more that you want to present?
No.
Okay.
Ready.
All right, Tracy and Laser in regards to the chat.
So it looks like there were only 2 questions that were posted from the chat. One was answered, and the second says, in a letter from the Board of Ed, stakeholders will be invited. Who gets invited as stakeholders? I think that was also answered. And I guess that's it.
Okay.
Any questions from other board
I don't know
members?
if it's Laser, is there anything else in the chat?
We're on a delay on YouTube, so probably have to give it a minute or two.
Sure.
Okay,
Like
thank
2 minutes
you.
behind. Yeah.
But it's an inclusive process, and that's our message tonight. Is this is the process we want as many people involved as possible, and you'll find that this is such a big deal in the community that people will want to be involved. They'll want to fill out the survey. They may not be able to even come to constituent groups, but they'll want to come in. So I see another question.
Tracy?
Tracy's
I'm
muted.
here. I'm here. I was trying to open it at the same time. Okay, so how are finalists determined? The top 2 to 3 that meet the most criteria priorities? What happens if a candidate is not in the top tier, but 1+ board member wants a certain candidate included in the final? Well, okay. I don't know who wants to answer that. I would think that that wouldn't matter, but I would want. How would you do it normally, Ray and Associates?
And so I know we've done, I'll answer first and Mike can add, that we've done a process where there have been internal candidates and other candidates. And so we put everybody through the same process. And so, you know, nobody should be allowed to circumvent the process. They go through the process. If they don't come out as one of the top candidates, then you can't put them in after the fact. This has to be a really, really honest and straightforward and data-driven process. And so that's the only way to make it fair. Mike, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, just the board will go through a process when we bring these 10 or 12 candidates to the board and they reduce them to anywhere between 4 and 6 who they want to interview. There's 2 parts. We actually have a matrix system that the board will go through, but we ask the board to decide this by consensus. So they will determine, they will invite, let's say 5 as a magic number. They invite the 5, they interview all 5. From there, and we don't sit in on the interviews. This belongs to you and your Board of Education. We don't live there. We come in afterwards and facilitate the board, and they will take those 4 to 6 or 5, whatever the magic number is, and take it down to 2, maximum of 3, who will become your finalists. That will be done by an overall consensus. Then those will be brought back to actually interface with the community in a participatory structure that we've described. And then secondly, the board will interview them again. Now, keep in mind, they not only, in order to get to the 10 or 12 when we started, have to meet your criteria, have to fit your profile that was developed by all of you. That's where it all starts. And keep in mind, this is a funnel. That's what it looks like. And it keeps shrinking. And so it comes to your criteria of what you're looking for. Then there's the interaction in the interview process. Then there's interaction with the community in another interview process. Before we even bring the 10 to 12 or 8 to 12 people who really are qualified, and the board can look at any person that applies. I mean, it's personnel, so it's not open to everybody, but the board certainly can look at, but beyond our recommendation if they choose. So, but we will have already screened them the first time, which will be their Google, their Bing, their media background. We will interview them. We will interview all their references, and we will find 1 or 2 people that aren't their references. But we won't do it in a way that jeopardizes their confidentiality from their current professional situation. So that we know even before we start, we're trying to take away anything that embarrasses you guys, you know, the community, the board, Ray and Associates, and the candidate. Understand that we care a lot about candidate care. So we are also concerned for them. Then as you go all the way down, the board will finally select a candidate after all this input. So yes, it's a structure. No, it's not just one board member. All these decisions will be made by consensus. This ideally is a decision of your Board of Education. I'm looking at your other questions. You guys want to filter the other questions? I think we answered.
I'm gonna read the questions to you, Mike, because I've been told that it's 1 question per person. So the next question that I see there is what specific qualifications, skills, and experience are being sought in a new superintendent? With those criteria be shared with the community? I guess it's supposed to say, will those criteria be shared with the community?
Yeah, that's the 33 the 33 questions that we have, that we ask everybody to pick 10. That is going to answer that question, and that will be shared with the community because it's developed by the community.
Okay, great. And then the next question is, how do you recommend increasing transparency in the process and thus trust in the results?
Well, again, the transparency is we want as many people as possible to really help develop this criteria. As we mentioned, the finalists, will be interviewed by the community in a very, very structured process. And the person that comes out of this at the end will have been vetted by the board, by the community, but it's the board's ultimate decision.
Okay, great. And will the community have an opportunity to speak to the search firm independently of the Board of Education without them present, aside from the surveys?
Mike, have you done that before?
Yeah, your opportunity is to come to the constituent meetings, because it'll be us that are running the constituent meetings. The board doesn't run the constituent meetings. Dale runs them.
Right.
I'm his, right or left hand guy, if we will. And if we have too many, then if we have a large number of groups, we can bring in a third person.
Mhm.
So your conversation with us one-on-one. Otherwise, we're not going to engage individual conversations per se, except as they are structured within the constituent groups, either on the front end or in the finalists, because we also facilitate all of those.
Okay, thank you. Next is, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I don't read more than one. How exactly does the Board of Education intend to involve the PTA, council, building level, activate for outreach? Please let us know your thoughts.
Well, again, as we talked about before, we want to be as inclusive as possible, and so certainly the PTA, the union, the staff, all will have input, into this process.
Okay. Next question is, can the incumbent superintendent apply? If deemed best candidate, will she get an offer?
It's a process. I mean, it's a process. The board makes the ultimate decision. It's an open search, and people can apply. I mean, that's an unusual circumstance. Mike, I don't know if you want to add.
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Or heard about it. Dale's got it on the head. I mean, the process is the process. And to tell you the truth, it's the actual professionalism that goes with HR practices, ethics practices, et cetera, that consideration is given to all that apply. Consideration is given to all that fit the descriptions that you all created. And by consensus, it's the board's responsibility by law to then funnel this down to make a selection.
Okay, thanks. Next is, what has Ray and Associates done in previous superintendent searches in which the community has petitioned to keep the previous superintendent?
Well, that's kind of like the previous one, the question that there's a process. This is a process. It's not about politics. It's about, it's about qualifications, and we'll go through that process, and the best person will come out of it. We feel really strongly that this process works, that the best person, whoever it is, will come out of this process. But at the end of the day, it's the board's decision. As I said earlier, this is the most important decision a school board makes, and ultimately the board's decision. But the input from the community and the process is really, really important.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anything else, but I don't know, Laser, if you want to wait a minute to see if anything pops up in the chat.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question in the meantime?
Yeah, we're gonna, Miss Carey, you can ask the question later. If there's no other question or the new question, then we will close the meeting after Miss Carey.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Perry.
Oh, okay. I just have one question. Will your firm do background checks on the candidates, or is that going to be left up to the board?
No, we Mike alluded to it, that we will not only do the background checks, so we do the social media checks and others, and we will call the references, and as Mike said, we will call people who may not even be on their reference list without giving a hint that people are applying. So it's a very, very thorough process, and the people that come to you towards the end of this process will have been vetted thoroughly. And that's kind of the experience we bring, is that we know what are red flags. They may not seem like red flags, but they could be red flags. Mike?
The last thing is your finalists actually go through one more vetting system that's actually in the fee. So you're not even paying extra for it. It is every single background side but an FBI check. So it is all drivers, all finances, bankruptcies, et cetera. There's a laundry list. It's in our proposal. Actually, the board has seen that, or it's at least sitting there. It gives the whole list. There's like 7 other checks that are done. We do it with a professional firm. We don't do it inside. We are not professionals in that area of the field. So yeah, so you get the first round of screening, which has everything to do with what seems to be public performance and behavioral. And the second time is the bottom line database, and all the finalists have to go through it. And they know it. They're not unaccustomed to it.
Thank you.
You know what? There is one more question in the chat.
All right.
I just thought. I can barely hear you, Antoinette. You tell me to wait?
Yeah. Terry,
okay.
Do you mind holding to that last community question goes, and then you'll go after? Terry?
Yes, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I said, do you mind holding until that last community question?
Well, my question actually was about that, because I looked in the chat as well, and I saw a question from Denise Alamo that did not look like it had been asked. I don't know if that's the question that Tracy was also going to mention.
It is the question. Yeah,
I don't know, but Terry, do you? Okay, that's fine. So I guess you guys are asked. It's going to be asked. So Tracy, go ahead.
Okay. So does Terry have a question or no?
I do not. I was just raising my hand to get Denise Alamo's question answered.
Got it.
Or at least asked.
So I see here it says, is it standard practice to put someone's name into your announcement in your site? It included, I guess, the incumbent's name?
No.
But I don't understand the
That's
question.
a question for Ray and Associates. The question is it standard practice to include the incumbent's name on your website? It's written not like a question, so I can read it as it's written. Maybe that will make more sense. Okay. I have never seen an incumbent's name mentioned in an announcement. Your site included this. Is this standard practice in education? To what end if that person will not remain in the district? That's for Ray and Associates.
Kathy, do you have any idea?
The only thing, the incumbent part lost me. What we typically do once a contract has been signed, then we put on our website the name of the new person behind the link to the job posting. We'll say, congratulations, whatever. That's what we do, but not until a contract is signed. And then we leave it up for the entire season. I'm not sure that that's what they're asking, but that's the answer I'm going to give.
Okay, and a couple more questions. I'm sorry, was someone saying something? Okay, another question popped up in the chat. What is the COVID effect of the candidate pool?
Mike?
Yeah, it's had an effect. It really had effect this past year. So to give you an idea, because of the March through May or through June scenario, where so many districts across the United States of America were put in a position to basically be virtual and very little hybrid. That caused a number of superintendents who were going to retire or might have actually started to look to stay. So what you have now is you're going to have a broader base of those that are leaving because they've given the extra year that they might not have planned. That's one side. The other side is our experience, and we've been doing this through COVID since last spring. We're probably we are witnessing roughly 5 to 10 fewer applications now, but I don't know what that means from January on, to be real blunt, because this is now we're going to turn the corner on an era where people are going to decide whether they're going to start to look again or they're going to stay one more year. So I would say, so we've actually now really talked about 40 to 50 applicants, not 50 to 60, because that's what our experience is at the moment because of COVID. In terms of affecting the quality of the pool, I don't think so. That's as best we can give you because our data is 6 months old, just like your data is 6 months old. We're telling you, and we'll keep the board informed of what we're seeing. But right now, that's as close as we can get, and we monitor it daily.
Okay, great, thank you. And I haven't seen any new.
I do want to pop in. It's not related, but it's related. I have to step out because I'm actually on my way to go get tested for COVID. So I'm leaving the meeting, but I'm around. Ivy's got my contact information, and I did forward Mike and Dale's phone numbers onto Ivy for her to distribute to everybody so they know whose numbers they're going to be calling. And Dale and Michael split up the list. Somebody will take 4, somebody will take 3 board members, and we'll get it done. And if you need anything, just let me know. It was a great meeting, and I'm sorry I have to leave.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All
Thank
Yes.
you.
right. Well, then somebody was telling me the truth when they said this meeting would be an hour, so I'm happy about that. Thank you everybody for participating. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me clearly. If you cannot, can you give thank you to everybody?
Wait, one thing.
Go ahead, Dave.
Regarding the schedule on the second page, can we assume that we should plan around those dates? Do I have a committee meeting that's planned for the 18th? I need to steer clear of that window. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I should move it? Okay, we'll do. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, thank you everybody. We appreciate your time. I do know so all board members should expect having some conversations about meeting with people individually from Ray and Associates. All right, thank you everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, good night.
For participating in your questions.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Night.
Bye.
Adjourn?
Night, Cora.
Bye.
Hey, Joel.
Thank you very